She reminded herself to keep her composure as she gave her husband a side glance. "Only a few minutes to go, and it's over," she whispered. "Stay calm." The judge was telling them how impressed she was by their parenting skills. She was convinced that they were going to win and that the boy would be able to stay with them. That is, until the boy spoke up. This wasn't the way they hoped things would go. She was sure she had covered all the bases, but she hadn't bargained for the two women in the courtroom who wanted them to lose their son. It seemed their neighbors thought the fact that they'd been neighbors for 2 years gave them the right to interfere in matters that didn't concern them. But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. Sarah and Stephen Rauch were a well-off couple who decided that they wanted to share their good fortune with others. They decided that foster care would be how they would help, and to the outside world, it seemed that it was all going well. Unbeknownst to everyone around them, the couple had been fighting a harrowing battle that began with a visit to the doctor. The couple decided to visit a specialist because they were struggling to have children. After an intensive investigation, the doctor broke the news to them. Stephen could not become a father. The tests further revealed that there was a problem with Sarah's womb and she wasn't physically unable to carry a baby. The couple were heartbroken. The doctor discussed other options of becoming parents with them. He mentioned adoption as a possible option, but he had no idea what this suggestion would result in. At first, Sarah and Steve thought adoption was their best option, and they started looking for a child available for adoption. Soon, though, something would happen that would make them reconsider. Things would change for them when they visited a foster home outside of Jacksonville. Once they met the foster kids, they started considering fostering instead of adoption. The couple had the best of intentions, and all they wanted to do was help. For many years, they opened their home to children in need, but many didn't know that things were taking a dark turn. The Rauch's neighbors saw happy, healthy children passing through Steve and Sarah's home and had no idea that something was amiss. That is, until Elsie and her wife Denise moved into the neighborhood and everything changed. Elsie worked from home, and one day she heard something that concerned her. At first, Elsie and Denise hoped that simply talking to Sarah about what they had witnessed would resolve the issue. They never had any intention of taking it to court. Their son, Kevin, was friends with one of the Rauch's foster children. Elsie and Denise's worry increased when Kevin told them something about the Rauch household that they didn't know. Kevin told his parents that Steve and Sarah Rauch were planning on adopting one of the foster children, a 13-year-old boy named Deshawn. This greatly concerned Elsie. After what she had witnessed, Elsie felt she had to do something about the situation. Deshawn was a friendly, respectful boy, and Elsie and Denise had grown very fond of him in the 2 years they had been neighbors of the Rauchs. Deshawn was a good friend to Kevin and encouraged him to work hard in school. Denise and Elsie were impressed with his lovely manner and wondered who had taught him so well. At first, Sarah was a delight to be around. She was funny and resourceful, showing some of the beautiful qualities his foster son had shown. Steve was even more wonderful to be around, with endless stories of his Army days coupled with his experiences in the corporate world. But beneath this veneer of perfection lay a bed of filth Elsie and Denise would soon uncover. The couple sat across the Rauchs in court as the adoption hearing went on. They were here to oppose it, hoping the judge would hear them out. For 2 months, the two had been coming here for Deshawn's adoption case. They opposed it vehemently, knowing what the boy was going through when everyone wasn't looking. But would anyone believe them? Do you have proof? Elsie felt like her hands were tied. She wished she'd recorded what she saw. His being in foster care had been his last line of defense, given that one day he'd leave the Rauchs. But now that Sarah and Steve wanted to adopt him, he'd be tied to them forever. Elsie should have known that this wouldn't end the way she thought it would. This was the last hearing before the court finalized the adoption. The judge called on Elsie to talk, as he had every time there was a hearing. With a glance at Deshawn, who sat quietly beside Sarah and Steve, she approached the stand. "I don't think the court should allow Sarah and Steve to adopt Deshawn," she said, steeling her heart with courage and resolve. "It's not right, Your Honor. Those two are not parents. They shouldn't be allowed near any child and should face the full wrath of the law for what they are doing. But she wouldn't be talking for long. I'd give my life before I let anything like that happen to my own son, she said, sharing a look with Denise. It's quite difficult to sit here and watch as the court hands those two a wonderful soul as Deshawn, unaware of what they're capable of. She never minced her words either, and usually laid out things without fear or favor. One Friday evening, Denise heard a commotion from the Rauch home. Luckily, her and Elsie's bedroom was on a higher elevation than their neighbors. She had a clear view of what was happening in that house. It was then that she saw the truth. Elsie hadn't been lying. Deshawn needed to be out of that house, and fast. As the courtroom tension grew, Deshawn sat in silence, his heart heavy with the knowledge of what he had endured during his time with the Rauch family. Throughout the hearings, Deshawn had been coached by Sarah and Steve. They warned him of the consequences if he ever revealed the truth about what was happening in their house. But he could only hold his tongue for long enough. Just as the judge was about to declare the adoption final, Deshawn couldn't hold back any longer. His voice quivered, but he spoke out, "Your Honor, I need to tell you something." The entire courtroom fell silent, and all eyes turned to Deshawn, who was now standing and trembling with fear. Deshawn took a deep breath and continued, "Sarah and Steve are not who they seem to be. They told me not to say anything, but I can't let them do this to me or anyone else anymore." The judge's expression shifted from one of certainty to one of concern. With tears streaming down his face, Deshawn began to recount the horrors he had endured at the hands of Sarah and Steve. He described the crippling torment, the neglect, and the constant threats that had kept him silent for so long. The judge, deeply moved by Deshawn's testimony, halted the adoption proceedings. He immediately ordered a thorough investigation into the allegations and placed Deshawn in temporary foster care for his safety. Over the following weeks, a team of social workers, therapists, and investigators worked together to gather evidence and interview witnesses, including other children who had been in the Rauch's care. The horrifying truth began to emerge, weaving a tapestry of terror and manipulation. Sarah and Steve were arrested and charged with multiple counts. Sarah and Steve Rauch were found guilty and sentenced to lengthy prison terms. Deshawn's nightmare was finally over, and he was placed with a loving and supportive forever family. Elsie and Denise were hailed as heroes for their courage in standing up for what was right. Their actions had not only saved Deshawn, but it also exposed a deeply flawed system that needed reform. The judge, who had initially praised the Rauchs for their intentions, now recognized the importance of a thorough and diligent vetting process for foster parents. He vowed to do everything in his power to prevent such a tragedy from happening again in his court. Deshawn's new family provided him with the love, care, and stability he had longed for. He thrived in his new environment, making friends and excelling in school. The scars from his past began to heal, and he looked forward to a bright future. His story served as a stark reminder of the importance of vigilance and advocacy to protect those who could not protect themselves.